I last spoke with stand-up comic Sumukh Torgalkar in 2015 before he moved from Columbus to go west, not, I assume, because of our interview. He'll be back in Columbus to record his second stand-up comedy album on June 3rd at Madlab. Welcome back to Craft, Sumukh.
Thank you, Doug. It's good to be back.
Well, tell me about some of the changes in your life and your comedy since we last spoke in 2015. I'm guessing there have been a few.
Yeah, I suppose a lot has changed physically with my location. Obviously, I recorded my album in Columbus at the Funny Bone. And then at the end of the year, so beginning of 2016, I moved out to LA. And LA was fantastic. Really enjoyed doing comedy out there, being in the epicenter of comedy. I ran a show, did several shows, was still traveling, doing stand up out of LA, but also kind of building something out there as well too. But for personal reasons, as well as just looking at the state of myself within the comedy business too, and what was providing me happiness, at the beginning of 2020, I moved to northern Colorado. So I'm kind of in the mountains of Colorado, a little north of Fort Collins. And I had every intention of kind of quarterly returning to LA, maybe running my show, just continuing to touch base with all that I knew in LA and being part of that, comedy community as well as just the business in general. But of course, the pandemic happened. And so I have mostly just stayed within Colorado. And I think we've seen through the pandemic a lot of different aspects to comedy has changed as well. But that was also the direction the business was kind of heading as well too, which was very internet reliant.
Okay. And so why return to Columbus for the recording? What draws you back to the most beautiful city in America and the nicest people and the best weather?
Yes, that the weather was really the main reason. But I started in Columbus, and I knew I really wanted to return to Ohio in some capacity to do my second album, and I was planning this right before the pandemic. And then the pandemic hit, and I've been holding on doing this until now. But coming back to Columbus felt appropriate just because of starting there, being there for so many years. Just have a good base of really great people that have been supportive of my comedy. And so hoping they will come out, as well as many others who might not be familiar with me, to just come support, be a part of that recording, as well as, it's different than when I lived in Columbus. And that was where I was honing all these jokes. And so I'd be out at many different open mics or established shows within Columbus during that time. In this case, it's, the material I've written when I've been in LA or Colorado, and that's developed even in the pandemic stuff I did on virtual shows, because that was kind of the avenue to go about continuing to work on stand up. So that really was what drove returning back to Columbus, was that familiarity, being able to come back. I haven't really been back since the pandemic happened. So in a lot of ways, it just felt fitting.
So tell me about some of the topics that you've been working on that you've been thinking about that might or might not appear on June 3rd at Mad Lab when you're there.
So it will be, a continuation of certain aspects that were part of the first album, in the sense of meeting new people, the challenges of dealing with my cultural background and my name. Certainly, I've lived in more rural parts of Colorado since being out here. Some material, obviously, about living in the city in LA as well, and then a lot about, I had a very close relationship with my parents, and I still do. But there's a difference in being 2 hours away from them in Columbus, because they live in Cleveland, as opposed to now being thousands of miles away. But the absurdity of that still hasn't changed, and their ability to call me up and bother me about a lot of different funny things. So, still a lot of the components that were, consistent in my act of discussing family, culture, upbringing, and just kind of the connections with other people socially,
Mhm.
and my own little interests. The pandemic has brought out my ability to delve into pop culture in my own weird ways. So there's been humor to come out of that as well too. So that's what I'll be working on with the album recording.
Okay. You mentioned you mentioned your family during your stand up. How does that go over with them? I'm always curious how they respond to it. Are they supportive of the way you portray them? Do they say, "I don't recognize that part of me"?
Yeah, no, they're great with it. At least they feel that way and are super supportive to my face. But yeah, nothing about what I do comedy wise. Yes, I suppose I'm making fun of them, but it's not making fun of them for their faults. I think it's making fun of them for who they are, and that actually many other people could probably connect with that. So it is just now at a certain age dealing with elderly parents and dealing with their challenges with technology. Certainly that was part of the pandemic. And so I don't think that they're obviously super supportive. They share all the information about my comedy, so they love it, and they aren't too hurt by it. And the way I go about presenting it still is coming from a place of love while still being able to laugh about it.
You had mentioned that you've seen a lot of changes in the comedy landscape, partially because of the pandemic, partially because being virtual and online is so much more common now. Tell me about how that's impacted your presentation, your career, things like that.
Sure. So even when I was in Los Angeles, I began doing a YouTube channel, and through the it was going well, but through the pandemic, that certainly um, flourished in a certain way. But we've seen that of other colleagues of mine in stand up too, where they switched gears, whether it be creating TikTok videos or whatever other presence might be there that's related to videos and the internet and how people are turning to comedy in that way. And it actually sparked their careers and the trajectory of it in a way that probably none of us anticipated because we'd always been doing stand up for a long time and feeling like, well, stand up will provide the path into acting or a sitcom opportunity or things like that that people envision of how the 90s went, like with Seinfeld or Roseanne. Now it's kind of been upended where really you're building that following online, and then that will create your opportunities with other avenues, with Hollywood or whatever it might be in the entertainment industry. So for me, I became very comfortable just creating these videos on YouTube, and it felt so much better than going out to open mics necessarily. Of course, that wasn't even an option during the pandemic. And all of a sudden, you're creating something, putting it out on the internet. My YouTube channel is a mix of how to videos with humor, as well as doing some reviews of products. So things along those lines of bringing my humor while being helpful to the audience. And so that's provided me personally some great satisfaction as a comedian, as well as it seems to be helpful and funny to a major audience, a global audience that probably would never have interacted with me just purely based off stand up.
When you're doing the stand-up stuff and when you're doing the video stuff, what speaks to you maybe the most? Because it seems like they're so very different to me. When you're in front of a live audience, you can read the audience. You can A joke does well here, it doesn't do well there. You're in front of a video. That's generally you, maybe a couple of crew members, something like that. But it seems to me, and I'm not a comedian, so I don't really know, but it seems totally different.
Yeah, it is completely different, and I think that's a challenge for some. But if you allow yourself to differentiate it and be okay with that, then you can embrace both. Obviously, live performance is still what are my origins, so I love it. It's but if you allow yourself to separate how stand up and the experiences from what you're doing video wise, I think that's what provided me with satisfaction. So what I'm doing video wise is not me just telling jokes. It's me actually creating a video that can be consumed in a certain way and be helpful to people while providing them laughter, hopefully. And so I also have to prepare myself to understand how the audience interacts with that. So, of course, for the most part, I get positive feedback, but there's definitely complete strangers that obviously feel the need to either be trolls or say whatever they feel. And that is something you very rarely will get in live stand up. I mean, in live stand up, unless the person is completely drunk, people have a tendency to not say maybe things face to face that they would gladly type over a keyboard or on their phone. And so that's a huge difference for, and I think is a challenge for some that I know that feel hesitant to maybe put themselves on the internet in that way. But I will say that the business is headed that direction. And I'm okay with it because I guess what I'm putting out there shouldn't draw too much criticism, I would hope.
Mhm.
I still do get personal negative comments, but I don't take it to heart too much because I also understand going into it how the internet operates. And for the most part, I'm doing a positive thing to
Yeah.
me, and it feels positive based off most of the comments I receive.
It's interesting you say that because we've had two recent high profile events with the Chris Rock slap and Dave Chappelle being tacked on stage, that it's almost like that stuff is moving more into the mainstream. And I remember after the slap, there was a lot of talk about what will happen to comics on stage. Will they censor themselves? Will they be worried about somebody? And then what was it, a week and a half later, Dave Chappelle gets rushed at his show. You're just
Yeah.
like, oh my God, yes, is this a trend? What's happening here? So
Yeah, it's very strange, and I would hope it won't be a trend. I think it's a problem because it's such two very high profile situations that we would have never anticipated out of another high profile celebrity in Will Smith. And then in the Dave Chappelle situation of someone who just seemed, I don't really know the huge background of it, but some sort of rabid fan with obviously some kind of issues. And so, for me on a personal level, I'm not too concerned with it because I don't think it'll be a trend, and I also don't think my if somebody is attacking me for my material or who I am, I mean, then we are in real trouble because I don't really brush on things that should cause people to attack me.
yeah.
But I really hope that's not the direction that we're headed because live stand up is no different than the theater, than music. There's a lot of really wonderful components to that. And I think for the most part, everybody will behave and be understanding of it and really enjoy it. I just think we've caught ourselves in a time where a couple of really strange, high profile situations have happened. And then that leads to the culture talking about it.
Well, Sumukh Torgalkar, I want to thank you very much for talking to me today. We're looking forward to your June 3rd comedy album recording at Madlab, and I'll put links to where you can get tickets and all that kind of stuff, as well as your YouTube channel on crafttheshow.com. So thank you very much and welcome back to Ohio.
Thank you, Doug. I really appreciate it.